Assalamu alaikum, good day. Welcome to Uncovered with Fazlin Fransman-Taliep. Today we're joined by Shaykh Salieg Isaacs, and we're going to be unpacking civil activism and what that means both within the context of COVID-19 as well as within the context of the socio-economic challenges that we face in South Africa. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Salieg, how are you?
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm very well under circumstances. We have to make the best that we have currently, alhamdulillah.
So, Sheikh, maybe just give me an idea of what it is exactly that you guys do. I mean, I might know, but I think some of our viewers might not know. What is it that you do and what inspired what you do?
Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Rabbi ishrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. I think first and foremost, something I must tell your viewers, obviously, and the listeners as well, that I grew up in Manenburg. My first school was in Manenburg. So later in life, when I moved, I had this to come back to Manenburg because I knew what was happening there. Manenburg is a challenged community. But let me start off by saying that we are currently operating in Manenburg, myself and Mona Samih Nuruddin. We have started this Manenburg Center of Information and Education. Well, the idea is, the name itself, it's a more holistic approach to Manenburg and all these challenges. For example, we are involved with education, some social upliftment programs as well. And spiritual programs we have highlighted because Manenburg and similar areas are challenged. So we initially started off having spiritual programs in Manenburg because Manenburg, for example, is it's an area that just need a bit of calmness. We started, for example, 3 years ago. We had started with the outside because every Thursday evening in one of the streets, so in the courts, so one of the spaces in parks in Manenburg, we will have an outside dhikr. It started very slow, but after 3 years, the amount of people has grown. And actually, we restarted it now last week on Thursday after 5 months. And we would worry, for example, if people are going to come. And for some reason, we had a couple of hundred people coming. There is a great need for spirituality in Manenburg. And then obviously, we look at the education part of it as well. Myself, educator as well. I teach at high schools, so I use my background as well, identifying learners or even adults as well that need some education, because we believe, when you empower someone in Manenburg or some of similar areas, we can actually change their lives instead of just feeding them all the time. Okay. Then obviously COVID-19. Got us in March, and then we had to, change our approach. And remember, Islam is about holistic development and approaches. So our approach moved slightly of, the spiritual side stayed, but we were more concerned now of feeding the people, because what happened in Manenburg is that people were losing their jobs after 6 weeks. There were some challenges there. So we increased the amount of feeding schemes in Manenburg. There was a time there were 16 feeding spots in Manenburg. We started a WhatsApp group where all of them almost combined our efforts, and we shared our resources while making sure that all sides of Manenburg are catered for. I also want to tell you, Fazlin, is that not only in Manenburg, also myself and Maulana has decided, when we see another area that needs something, we want to stimulate an activity there as well. We've touched Hanover Park, we've touched Ocean View, Alsace River, Atlantis, these areas as well. I mean, the idea is also to learn from those people as well, and also to share with them what we are doing in Manenburg, alhamdulillah.
So maybe give a scenario of what inspired the starting of this organization? What was the dynamics in Manenburg that you felt that needed to be addressed through partly the work that you guys are doing?
I think growing up in Manenburg, I remember when I was there in grade 1, grade 2 as well. You obviously visually and obviously your parents inform you, and you can actually see that it's a challenging community. Unlike other areas, that was of my first concern, is that there was a lack. You know, when I lived there and I moved out and I came back after a few years and I just gauged and I saw there needs to be someone or some activities needs to be developed in Manenburg to stimulate in Canada. Because if I grew up in Manenburg and I was able to, you know, to matriculate and become a teacher at schools, it is possible for any person there. So I use my personal experience, obviously, to relate to those people. If it can happen to me, obviously, it can happen to you as well. And that was one of the starting points as well. And Maulana Samir, he was also inspired. He grew up in Manenburg as well. He still stays in Manenburg. And he furthered his studies whilst living in Manenburg. Obviously, he's completed his Alim course at the Darul Uloom. Also, he's an example, and he wants to show people also, and the little ones and the young ones, that you can live in Manenburg in sub-economic areas and it will still be a success and whatever. So there's a lot of challenges in Manenburg, hence the long name, Manenburg Center of Information and Education. There's a lot of information need to be shared with our community there, and a lot of education that must take place as well. So hence we have that, that is currently our foundation, drawing those learners, those people to become educated and at the same time spiritually uplifted as well.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about, obviously we all know that COVID-19 kind of hit us all for 6 in that it required us to think very differently about the way we do things. So for example, if COVID-19 wasn't around, we might have been doing this interview in studio or in person, right? But so all of us in some way or form had to evolve the way we do things because of COVID-19. Now, in terms of specifically your organization, how has the mission, you've alluded to it in terms of the feeding schemes, but how has things been forced to change, and what difficulties came with that?
Okay, so one of the benefits of a feeding scheme part, for example, we always had a feeding scheme because Manenburg is a sub-economic area. So we had a weekly scheme running in Manenburg, for example, with a couple of our colleagues. With the COVID-19, we found that lines increased every week. So we noticed that we need to make adjustments according to the feeding scheme. Instead of now feeding 2 pots of food, for example, in a specific area or a specific road, we had to increase capacity. And myself and Mona, obviously, we drew up some posters and we got some donors to come on board about to assist us as well, and making sure that we have enough resources. And I must admit, you know, from all walks of life, we got a sponsor from the interfaith group. It means it from simply because we don't feed only the Muslim people as well. When it comes to education as well, not it's only Muslim people. We look at across the border in Manenburg. The feeding part is exactly the same. So we had to make adjustments there. We had to increase capacity right to our donors. And one of our recipients at Shamla Edwards was visited by our mayor, Dan Plato, and he actually handed over about two stoves, these gas stoves, and 2 pots for able to cope, because she didn't cope. So we had to increase capacity, the feeding part. Also, we had to broaden and find new spaces to feed the people, because we were only, for example, at 4 feeding schemes running in Manenburg, and gradually we asked other people to come on board and we equip them as well. So that we had to change. It's still the same, even you know, COVID, the levels has been but eased, but we still maintain feeding those almost 16 spots in Manenburg. That we had to change. Okay, we are currently busy with a educational program as well. We're trying to identify those learners, a learner or two that is not that won't be able to pay for tertiary education. We actually got a sponsor now, currently in contact with us, who wants to sponsor. Another person wants to sort out the stationery for 2021 because of they know some of these people have lost their jobs. There will be obviously challenges for learners going to school without resources. So we have that person. So yeah, the COVID-19 has a 6, I think it's a 6 square, if I think about it. More challenges. But then again, I think it's very important that we were very blessed to have started, you know, something, because it's always best, you know, to springboard from that small effort, then restart everything. Alhamdulillah.
So I just want to, you touched on the interfaith component, which I think is so important. So obviously Manenburg is not just a Muslim community, it is a very diverse community. So in terms of your programs, and I know, I mean, one of the things that I know that you guys are very well known for, over and above the feeding schemes, is the outside dhikrs, where you do it in Manenburg as well as other areas. How does this relate in terms of the appealing to an interfaith community, and how do you kind of manage that?
Well, you know, we had to start with something in Manenburg. We were sitting and, you know, brainstorming, and we came up with something like the outside dhikr, just a dhikr outside, simply because it has it has an attraction amongst a lot of people. It's a very easy activity to do. There's a lot of logistics involved, and also a non-Muslim community. When I grew up in Manenburg, I remember the madrasas at the time was filled with Muslims, and my friend Keith was in the madrasa as well. So they understood something about Islam as we grew up there. And also the dhikrs, when they had dhikrs in Manenburg many years ago, they used to be part of it, whether they in the dhikr or doing the saji part as well. You know, the catering part, they were always involved in janazas as well. So we didn't look at from a interfaith initially, but what we found, the first adhkar, a couple of ones that we had in Manenburg 3 years ago, we found that the non-Muslim was standing around as well, and the children it was very interesting with them to observe dhikrs. And when we come to the feeding part, obviously they were involved. And since that day, we found that our dhikrs in Manenburg, they are always surrounded by Muslims and non-Muslims. We had 2 years ago a mass iftar in the land, the Manenburg Avenue, and it was like 2,000-3,000 people in the street. And someone asked the question, Asiu, must the non-Muslims also sit on this dastakhana, for example? And I said to them, no, it's for all. This specific program, when we have the program, especially the eating part, we share it with them. We also, obviously, I belong to an interfaith group, and they were interested as well because they found it very spiritually uplifting. It doesn't even make sense sometimes that people from other religions find a dhikr or something from Islam comforting as well. We had Nick Payton, for example, one of my colleagues, he sat in one of the dhikrs. We had Pastor Bok from Belgravia, 7th Avenue, he was one of our guest speakers. The purpose of the dhikr was to bring some, you know, calmness in Manenburg. So the maqsad, it was this is about comparative theology and not comparative religion. It was to do with comparative theology, where we have the same cause, the same maqsad, the aims and objectives are the same. Like Pastor Bok, he will also agree with us that we need calmness in Manenburg, and that is why the interfaith has become part of the dhikr as well, because simply because the aim of it is exactly the same, alhamdulillah.
So I think that's you touched on something that's so valuable and sometimes unthought of, is obviously sometimes when we look at a community like Manenburg and we think, how do we address the issues? We only talk about the material concerns of people, so whether it's food, employment, whether it's dealing with gang violence and all of that, and we sometimes neglect the spiritual component of it. So I think that what you're referring to is something I think we all kind of need to reflect on. But within, I want to draw out that another question. So within the context of Manenburg being a community known for gang violence, for people that specifically that has never been to Manenburg but have heard of Manenburg, that's what they hear. And I think the beauty is what you guys are doing is starting to change the perception of what Manenburg actually is or represents. But to bring it back to the component of gang violence or violence as a general principle, how does that coexist, or how does what you're doing coexist with that reality?
In 2019, SAPS, Manenburg SAPS invited myself and Mona Samir to a function, and lo and behold, part of the function was to acknowledge the outside diggers. We got a special award. We don't take, obviously, it was presented to us, myself and Mona, but obviously it's the program. So the SAPS police we were quite amazed that what is said, the reason why we got the award, myself and Mona Samir, from the Manenburg Center, is that when the Dikkers started 3 years ago, there was a period between April and October that year that there was a reduction in the crime, especially the gang violence has subsided. And I don't know if you noticed, you watch the news now for the last month or so, it is flared up again in Manenburg. And wow, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. But remember, this is the same time we haven't made Dikkers for the last 5 months. There is, according to Captain Ian Bennett from SAPS Manenburg, he laid to us, and it was quite fascinating that the Dikker, outside Dikker, was so powerful that it was able to bring about that consciousness in people around in Manenburg. And for some reason, the gangs didn't. There was a lot of violence. All the petty crime was obviously there. But that award, and I still have it in my some way, I'm very proud of it as a group, as a team, that we received that, and we were able to make that change, to bring about change simply with the outside Dikker. So it had a profound effect on the community. And obviously that's the reason why we're continuing with it this coming Thursday as well. For some reason, when that sound, we have sound as well, the adhkar just, reverberates right through the courts of Manenburg, and for some reason people are quiet. So there is a different link to the Dikkers. And what we do also, we identify a hotspot. If we find a specific gang operates there, that we will highlight, and we will identify a specific area close by. We will set up our sound, we'll make the Dikker for 2 hours, we'll be busy there. And for some reason, they won't be violence there. So it has a positive effect. And we hope, inshallah, when we introduce it again, it will bring about social change. Like you said, very importantly, we said exactly the same thing. We are concentrating on the positive parts of Manenburg. We had a program last year, a program where we highlighted all the great things of Manenburg. We highlighted there was a medical doctor that lives in Manenburg. There's also a girl from Hilton Court in Manenburg, and she passed a couple of years ago with 7 distinctions. And she lives amongst all these violence. So we highlighted that part, telling the world out there, listen here, Manenburg, don't say Manenburg is a gang-infested area, man. There are these great people there that lives there. You hear more. And the idea is like programs like this, Fazlin, is like, we want to showcase it and let the social media know, listen here, there are good things in Manenburg, man. You just hear more bad things.
So in terms of the programs that you're doing outside of Manenburg, you spoke about supporting feeding schemes in other communities. I know on one of the areas which we certainly met and I had conversations on was in Ocean View at the start of the year, or end of last year. I can't recall exactly the time frame, where there was an outflow of violence and you guys went and made dhikr there. What are some of the other projects that you're doing outside of Manenburg, and what is the aim in doing those?
Yeah, I think one of the aims, let me just tell you, when we take a bus and we've been to Sirius, we took a busload of our elderly people to Sirius, for example. And there's many, many reasons. We took them to Hopefield as well. You know, our people in Manenburg, they listen to gang war, they listen to the same story, they open the door and they see poverty, and they just see negative things. So one of the reasons why we move sometimes out of areas to take some of our people, especially our elderly people, to let them, when we were driving to Sirius, I just heard this positive vibes from them, and you know, they just were glad just to come out of that frustration and to see about it and just enjoy the scenery. So one of the reasons why we also go to other areas, simply because in Islam, the Prophet Muhammad Mustafa didn't only give dawah or in the Saudi peninsula. It was encouraged from there to go outside to areas as well to spread the message. So one of the reasons we go is that we want to spread the message of peace, and also we want to spread knowledge there as well. We want to spread that calmness. We went to a place called I can't remember these names, but we did this 4 or 5 hours drive to share how challenges. Sometimes we hear a place far away that have similar challenges, and we want to express our challenges there as well. Remember, if those people are not surrounded by assistance, I take the example of Ocean View. Ocean View is very unique. Ocean View is not surrounded by other communities like Manenburg. Manenburg has got Sherwood Park, it's got Bonteville, it's got Surrey Estate. But Ocean View, very isolated. You have to take almost a passport to drive to Ocean View. This is how far for some people. So those areas we identify. We went to Atlantis one day as well, sharing, you know, our skills. And sometimes people don't understand that really. We actually go there to learn as well, because sometimes we stay in our own space. But if you move away, sometimes we hear or we learn more from other areas, and we see that appreciation. You know, when we went to Atlantis, for example, normally we just feed these people and we come home. But when we went to Atlantis, those people insisted, leave the pots here, you're not going to take this pot, we want to clean it ourselves. So we learned something, and we felt very, we feel, myself and Mona felt very good about it as well, although we didn't compel them. But this is the attitude of communities, and we learn from it, and when we come back to Manenburg, for example, we tell them about our experiences, and lo and behold, we find similar practices now in our group where people, we assist them, and now they're assisting us by doing these small things. We're going to share Fazlin, we share our education, we share knowledge, we share this feeling of oppression, and we listen to the news. Remember when they killed Tasneem van Wyk, I think last year, or was it 2 years ago, we immediately responded. But the reason why we can is because we are currently, we are active. It's very important to be active, and all you need to do is you make that phone call and you transfer the Thursday dhikr from the Manenburg Street to Elsie's River where she lives. Same with Imam Solomon's, we did as well. So it's about holistic development.
So just finally, and to kind of summarize, if you can tell me, what is the vision, the overall vision? You spoke about working holistically in the community. There's a spiritual component, there's a feeding component, there's an education component. But what is your vision, maybe in terms of what you want to ultimately achieve in, let's focus on Manenburg for now. What do you want to achieve with the work that you're doing? And what are the other programs that maybe you're looking to roll out or to do in the future?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes a very tricky question, because someone asked me the same thing in a very informal way. Do you think you're going to make changes? And I reminded them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as you know, commanded us through the lifestyle of Muhammad Mustafa, you just do the work. Sometimes it's a small bit, sometimes it's only the dhikr, but within that dhikr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings about major changes. Our vision, basically like any other person, when we started off working in Manenburg, when I went back to Manenburg and assisted, brought about my assistants, I said to them, if Switzerland, for example, can be the most happiest country voted in 2013, for example, simply because it had no unemployment, they were a happy country, the climate was very low, why can they be successful in us? And I'm using example of Germany and also the Germans and Japanese. Their whole country was destroyed by 1950. After the Second World War, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, it was completely destroyed. But those countries, I'm not talking about Manenburg as an area, but countries, those two countries have lifted them up. They are superpowers now. They can look after themselves. We're driving the cars. Why? If they can do it. So I use those examples and telling people, listen here, this Manenburg can become Manhattan Estate if we wanted to. It's about perseverance. It's about possibilities, and we want to create that that notion that anything is possible. We use the example of Taif, was entirely against the Prophet, threw him with stones, and today the entire Taif is Muslim. So we want to bring about positive messages. Our vision is to bring that Manenburg into a space where, alhamdulillah, we will also obviously have challenges where they live like our counterparts, our other colleagues live in Melkbosstrand and other areas. It doesn't need to be a fantastic area. We can live in I know, like in the Palestinians, for example. I use the examples of the Palestinians who have been struggling for so many years, Fazlin, and there's no drugs there. There's no one smoking drugs there. And I tell all my Muslim friends in Manenburg, I know you were struggling, but you don't have to become addicted to drugs because of that. Okay? So we want to bring up this, we have this vision to bring Manenburg into a space where Manenburg can be that catalyst of change. If people look at Manenburg, oh, 5 years ago, you should have seen 5 years ago. And from there, the ocean views, the Alsace rivers, the Pontivals, they will use us as a template to bring about social change as well. I want to say shukran for allowing us to share our thoughts and our activities with your show. Thank you very much.
No problem. Shukran so much. That was Shaykh Salieg Isaacs, obviously speaking to us about the really exciting, and it is exciting, programs that they're undertaking in Manenburg and surrounding areas, and also telling us about the compelling vision that both him and his organization has for the community of Manenburg. And I think that's certainly something that all of us can rally around.